The new Texas voting law will have a negative impact on minority communities. Join Mayor Sylvester Turner, who will moderate a panel discussion on February 5th at 9 a.m. Visit vote.tcww.org to register for this virtual event. Guest panelists will include State Representatives Ron Reynolds, Senfronia Thompson, and Attorney Christopher Hollins, former Harris County Clerk. If you are not a registered voter, register by January 31st to participate in the March 1st primary.
Okay, Brother Caldwell, I think I'll go ahead and open up the webinar. Is that okay?
Hey, good morning, Ron.
Morning, Mayor. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks, man. Y'all set to talk about voting?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm hoping Chair Thompson will be joining us soon. I don't think she's arrived yet, nor Attorney Hollins. So,
Well, I see the Pastor Ralph D. West is on.
Brother Mayor. Brother Mayor.
looking good.
Good morning.
How you doing, man?
I am doing fine.
Lord have mercy. This is the most serious conversation. I thank you for putting it on, man. This is a very real conversation that we've had.
Yeah, it is. So I appreciate y'all, hosting this conversation.
Yes, sir, man. This is serious. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Ron.
Good morning, Pas. Good to see you, man. Looking good.
Well, I'm trying to wake up. Saturday morning is No, but this is serious, man. I appreciate this, Doc. We'll talk about the rest of it later.
Good morning, Pass.
Good morning.
I'm going to be the technical side this morning.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
All right.
All righty. Okay, so you guys just let me know when you want me to go ahead and start. Oh, here we've got Sophronia. Great.
Yeah, we got Sophronia, we got,
Okay.
we got the Dean, and we got State Representative Ron Reynolds, and Chris Hollins can just join us when he comes.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start it, okay? How many minutes? Yeah, it's right at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Good morning. And welcome to one of the most significant conversations that will take place in the city of Houston. And with that said, let me make a couple of introductions, whisper a word of prayer, and then I want the panelists to jump in. We have several people, but we have 4 distinguished personalities that serve our community that's with us on the day. The first would be our Honorable Mayor, Sylvester Turner, who has served this state and this city for many, many years. For 27 years, he served the state as a representative in District 139. He's recognized at the national state levels, and he's currently serving his second term as the mayor of the 4th largest, soon to be 3rd largest city in the United States. I've had the privilege of knowing Mayor Turner, but he's also served the Church Without Walls, for 32 of the 34 years. So let's welcome our own Mayor, Sylvester Turner.
Thanks, Vance.
In addition to that, on our panel, we have another distinguished personality that has known me, I guess, all of my life, along with Mayor Turner. She has served the state as a representative since 1972. She has the distinct honor of being the longest serving woman and African American in Texas history. She is the Dean of the Texas House of Representatives and is currently serving her 25th term. She's the only recipient of the Rosa Parks Award from the Texas Legislators Black Caucus. Has been named one of Texas Monthly's top 10 best legislators. I want you to welcome the distinguished and the honorable State Representative Sophronia Thompson. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And then we have on our panelists, who was appointed as an interim county clerk of Harris County, Texas in June of 2020, after his predecessor resigned for health reasons. A 34-year-old, he was the youngest person and the first African American to hold this position. Since the conclusion of his term as county clerk, he's continued to serve as an advocate for voters' rights, democracy, and good government. He's currently in private practice and is the principal attorney at Hollis Law Group. Let us welcome attorney Chris Hollins. We're glad to have you with us, Chris.
Good morning, Pastor West. Good morning, church family.
And then on the last, I've heard people say this last but not least. I've been waiting to say that for a long time. We have another distinguished gentleman. Our last panelist is a member of the Texas House of Representatives representing State District 27, and he's been representing that district in the state of Texas since 2011. He's currently serving his 6th term in the Texas House. He's the first African-American state representative in Fort Bend County since Reconstruction. He was named the 2021 80th Session Legislator of the Year by both Fort Bend United and the Young and the Politics. He's also a young man that serves, and I'm grateful to call a member and a friend at the Church Without Walls. That's State Representative Ron Reynolds. Thank you for being here, Ron. Good to see you.
Thank you, Pass. Thank you.
Would you allow me, after hearing that introduction, whisper a word of prayer? Shall we pray together today?
Yes.
Our Father, we thank you for these men and for this distinguished woman. And we thank you for their service to our city, to our state. We thank you for their information, their inspiration, their formation. Would you give them the right words to say today to help us understand how significant these different changes are that affront our democracy? Would you help us to be receptive to what we hear? And may we respond the right way, get up and vote and do what is right. It is in your name we pray, and God's people say, amen.
Amen.
With that said, thank you for being here, and we look and listen forward to hear what you have to say to us. Carol Anderson has written the most provocative book, One Person, No Vote, and she speaks of it as being how voter suppression is destroying our democracy. Thank you for helping us hold up how important democracy is. With that said, I'm out of the way. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ralph D. West. I mean, you introduced everyone, and I know everyone knows you, but I certainly want to acknowledge, number one, as the founding pastor and the pastor of the Church Without Walls. And I'm just honored to be a member and have been strengthened by my membership, Dr. West, under your leadership and being at the Church Without Walls. And quite frankly, I would say that I couldn't be doing what I'm doing as mayor of the city of Houston without what I've received from the church. So it's just been very instrumental to me being able to stand. So thank you. And then let me thank the church for hosting a very, very important conversation. And I think this is the underpinning of everything we talk about. You can talk about police reform. You can talk about economics. You can talk about economic and health and housing disparities, all of that. But the underpinning of that is who we put in office. And so this cuts throughout every conversation that we can have, from birth to death. And we have the privilege of having three outstanding persons here. There's been a lot of conversation about voter restriction and intimidation and suppression laws. About 19 states have passed about 35 bills already to do that. Texas is in that number. And even before the recent legislative changes, Texas already had some of the most restrictive voting laws in the country, even before that. And so in these special sessions, regular sessions, special sessions, there were a number of legislators in the Texas House who stepped up to try to prevent those measures from passing, who went to DC to make their case. And two of the key personalities, legislators, are with us today in the deans, Representative Thompson and Representative Ron Reynolds. And then of course, Chris Hollins, in terms of being formerly with the Harris County Clerk and the Chief Election Officer. So you just couldn't have better people for this conversation. And I don't want to spend a lot of time because they have a lot of information to share. And then there are people who will have questions to come in. But I think maybe to frame this, because a lot of the bill that was passed in the legislature was pretty much caused by the changes that Chris Holland, when he was the Harris County Clerk and the Chief Election Officer, kind of put in place for the 2020 elections, where it really increased the number of people who voted in that election. So Chris, why don't we start with you first in terms of talking about the changes that came about that kind of led people in the legislature governor and lieutenant governor and others are saying, now we need to restrict, make even more restrictions. So why don't we start with you? Give us some background, and then we'll go to the next step. Brother Hollins, can you hear me? Chris?
Hey, good morning, Mr. Mayor. My Zoom decided to cut out, I think, right at the moment that you were introducing me. But what I heard was that the voter suppression laws that are now law in the state of Texas were in large part a reaction to what we did here in Harris County to increase access and to promote voter turnout in 2020. Is that correct?
That's correct. And you can tell us what those innovative changes were, the changes that were made that led to increased voter turnout, kind of serve as a backdrop, and then we'll get to turn to the legislative changes that came about.
Absolutely. Well, we remain in a pandemic today, but of course now we all have the option to be vaccinated. Many of us have taken that offer to keep ourselves safe. But just to rewind it.
Chris is coming in and out.
Communities, especially folks who were older or had health circumstances that made them more vulnerable. And so when I became county clerk on June 1st of 2020, it was going to be our job to ensure that people could exercise their constitutional right to vote, but that they could do so safely, but also do so conveniently and have the peace of mind that their votes were going to be counted. And so my very first act in office was to make sure that our seniors, those who were 65 years of age or older, had the opportunity to vote by mail and had the knowledge of their right to vote by mail. So we sent applications to all of our seniors, 400,000 folks over the age of 65 across Harris County and the Houston area. And more than 200,000 of our seniors ultimately applied to vote by mail. And that would allow them to vote from the safety and convenience of their sofas or their kitchen tables. In addition to that, we had the remainder of the population. We had 2.5 million total registered voters across Harris County. And we had to make sure that all of them could exercise that same right and do so safely. And so we started to think about what would be necessary to do that. Of course, we brought in all the protective equipment, the hand sanitizer, the masks, the plexiglass, instituting social distancing and everything like that in voting centers. But we also brought in drive-through voting for the first time in the history of the state of Texas, where people could vote from the safety and convenience of their vehicles. For folks who were working long nights, we had first responders, our firefighters and police officers who routinely clock in and out at 5 and 6 a.m. We had doctors and nurses that were working around the clock, back-to-back shifts, trying to save lives in our medical center, who often get off at midnight. People stocking shelves till 2 and 3 a.m., welders and electricians down at the Port of Houston who routinely work overnight. And so we said, how do we make sure that those folks get an opportunity to vote as well? And so another first in the history of the state of Texas, we introduced 24-hour voting, where just for one night only, folks could come at any time of day, any time of night, and cast ballots across the Houston area. We also tripled the number of early voting centers. So in addition to allowing us to social distance even further and have more options, you were 3 times as likely to have a voting center near your home, near your place of business, or near your place of worship. And there were many, many other initiatives that we put in place, like tracking your mail ballot online the same way you would track your Amazon package, making sure that our voting systems were faster and smoother, that we could have shorter lines, and that your mail ballots, when you did use them, would be counted faster and be able to be reported on election night. And the results of those actions spoke for themselves. We had record turnout here in Harris County. Nearly 1.7 million citizens showed up to vote in November of 2020, despite numerous obstacles to the actions that we were trying to put in place, and legal challenges from Austin and our Attorney General's office that tried to shut us down and in some cases throw out votes. But we fought hard to protect those votes. We were successful in doing so. And so we were very, very proud that not only so many of our neighbors came out to vote, but that we made sure that those votes counted.
Thanks, Chris. And then now let me go to the dean of the Texas House, Representative Thompson. I mean, there's no one more familiar with the system, the process, even the people there. But you all, bill was filed in the legislature, well, several times, and you all stood up and said no. Why don't you tell us why you all stood up and even took the action to go to D.C.? What were you trying to protect?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning to everyone. First of all, let me start off by saying voting is a right and not a privilege. We have a right like every citizen in the United States of America, regardless of our gender, regardless of our ethnicity, the right to vote. And that right to vote should be protected like every citizen's right. Here are some of the things that we objected to. The first hearing, lasted 23 hours and 35 minutes. And I mean, you go straight through. We started like 8 o'clock on a Saturday, and we went all the way through Sunday morning at 7:35 when we finished. We kept going. We don't take breaks. We don't do any of that. We just keep straight ahead. There were several parts of that bill that I objected, and I think it's bad. Number one, I objected to the poll watchers coming in and having so much authority to roam the room, almost look over a voter's shoulder, to be able to report what they believe that the election officers may be doing wrong and cause them to be charged maybe with a felony. I don't know if you remember, Mr. Mayor, and other members of this panel, in 2010 and 2012, there was a group of people who came to the Black and the minority communities within our county called the King Street Patriots.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
Those King Street Patriots came into the Black and brown communities, and they were all Anglo. And they came in looking like they was about to maybe put us all in jail. It was a suppression move. It was an intimidation move. The next thing we were concerned about is on the mail ballot was being able to put those last four numbers, either of your Social Security number or your driver's license number. And that number had to match the number that you put on your voter's application whenever you voted. I don't even remember what numbers I put on. And if they don't match, your mail ballot gets rejected. However, if you, like Mr. Holland says, if you keep up with your tracking your mail ballot, you may have an opportunity to cure it. The next thing about it is, if I'm your next door neighbor and you have filled your mail ballot out and you ask me to drop it in the mail, I might be committing a felony. Just doing a favor for you. If a caretaker is there and they ask you, well, what do you think about it? I'll vote for Mayor Turner, or should I vote for Reverend Ralph West's mayor? What do you think? I mean, that, may be a felony because they use the word undefined in the statute as encourage, and we don't know what encourage means. Right. In addition to that, the signatures, my signature, of many person's signature on the voter's application, different from the signature that may be on that mail ballot. Sometimes somebody may have had a stroke, and certainly their signature is going to change. And if that signature changes and doesn't match, that ballot may be thrown out. So they have made it, and I know I'm going on and on because there's so much of it, but they have put statutes of things in the statute that even make it difficult to give a ride to the polls. If you give a ride to the polls over 6 people, then you have to fill out an affidavit. And you got to talk about, why who you carry to the polls. And then
let me just stop you because I want you to. So if let's say historically people have gone, churches or whatever, have loaned their vans, for example, to go pick up people and take them to the polls. And so if they go and pick up people and it's more than 6 people, they have to. Go ahead on. Explain that again.
But if they have more than 6 persons in that van, then the driver or whoever on that van, they have to fill out an affidavit of who they are, name, address, phone number, and other information. And then they have to indicate who was in that van and why and what they were doing.
Okay.
Take them to the polls.
Right. Okay. Representative Reynolds, you want to chime in on some of the hard concerns that you have with the bill and not just here, but even across the board nationally as well.
Well, Mayor Turner, it's great to be on with you. I want to thank our pastor, Ralph West, Past, for allowing this platform, and the Church Without Walls, and certainly Attorney Chris Hollins for his expertise, and the dean who was right there with me, leading the charge, literally helping galvanize the quorum break that was historic in this state so that we could fight against this voter suppression bill. This is modern day Jim Crow 2.0. This is a form, Mayor Turner, as you know, of voter suppression, which was well articulated by Representative Thompson. And Chris Hollins laid out that this was a great success in Harris County, which was a model for the state on how you conduct elections during a pandemic. And we had record turnout with no problems. The Secretary of State, who was appointed by Governor Abbott, Republican, stated on the record that our elections were sound. There was no voter fraud. We didn't have problems with our elections. In fact, Trump won the state. The unfortunate problem that we have is a false narrative that was created by former President Trump of voter fraud that was rejected even by his own Republican Supreme Court justices, and court after court said there was no evidence. His own attorney, Rudy Giuliani, who advocated and put forth the false narrative of voter fraud, he is currently probably is going to be disbarred from the New York bar from bringing these frivolous claims. The people who asserted voter fraud, they're being sued for defamation. The point I'm making is there was no voter fraud. This was a pretext for a way to suppress the votes. Texas was already one of the most difficult states, if not the most difficult state to vote because of our strict voter ID laws and other mechanisms. This bill, Senate Bill 1 that passed, is putting impediments so that Black and brown folks, make no mistake about it, that is what it's designed to do. I want everyone to hear me well and hear me when I say this. The reason why we broke quorum, the reason why we fled the state was because we were fighting against a voter suppression bill that was designed to hurt Black and brown communities. It was designed so that the things that they did in Harris County, Mayor Turner, under your leadership, and Chris Hollins and Judge Hidalgo, to allow for drive-through voting, for allow for 24-hour voting, would be eliminated. We banned it. No longer can you vote 24 hours. That's gone. No longer can you do drive-through voting. That is over with. And unfortunately, in Texas, we're one of 12 states that doesn't have online voter registration, same-day registration. Why is it more easier in Texas to go and purchase a gun? Because we no longer have restrictions. You don't have to have a permit to go purchase a gun. I'm not trying to get off tax. I'm just trying to point out here the hypocrisy in what we did. This past session, we allowed it to easier to go get a gun and making it harder to go vote. Voting is the most fundamental, precious right that we have. And our forefathers whose shoulders we stand on literally died. They made tremendous sacrifices to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that allowed for folks like you and Sophronia and us to serve in office. It broke barriers of voter impediments. Well, we have those same impediments now back into place. And that is why we have to continue to fight. And everything that was articulated by Chairwoman Thompson is right. And so here's what I want to say, Mayor Turner, quickly, is that we have a very strong duty to continue to urge Congress, because that's what we were in DC doing. We were encouraging Congress to pass federal voting rights legislation, namely the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. At the time, it was the For the People Act, so that we could get federal voting rights legislation to trump state law in Texas. That is the only hope that we have, unless we get a new governor, lieutenant governor, and a majority in the House and the Senate to overturn and repeal SB 1. We need federal voting legislation. And so I want people to continue to press upon Congress. The House of Representatives did its part under the leadership of Al Green and Sheila Jackson Lee, the Congressional Black Caucus. They passed that legislation. It died in the Senate because of the filibuster. And I hope everyone is listening will continue to encourage Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin to do the right thing, to be on the right side of history and pass that federal voting rights legislation in the filibuster, at least for this. This is the cornerstone of our democracy, and we must protect the fundamental, precious right to vote.
And let me just say this. So the right to vote is fundamental. We have Senate Bill 1 that is currently the law of the land, unless it's reversed. So let's drill into the mechanics, because we want to make sure that people know what the law is and know what they should do, because people mail-in ballots are being rejected in Harris County. They're being rejected right now in Fort Bend. So I want us to explain to people what they should know to protect their right to vote and make sure that their vote is counted. Now, Chris and then the rest of you can chime in, because State Representative Sophronia Thompson mentioned about the new law requiring voters to use the last 4 digits of their Social Security number or their Texas driver's license number instead of matching signatures in order to vote. Can you? I'll start with you, Chris. Can you explain now what voters must do when they're voting by mail? What information is required to prevent their ballot from being rejected?
Absolutely, and just to frame up the problem and the challenge here, because it sounds simple. It says, "Oh, we believe in voter ID, so just write down your driver's license, just write down your number, and everything will be fine." But what we've seen just in the last couple of weeks is that it's not fine. Mail ballot applications are being rejected at record rates, more than 5 times the rejection rates of what we've seen in previous years. And this is very intentional, not only to make it harder for our seniors and folks with disabilities to fill out these applications, but in addition to that new challenge, our Secretary of State's office has been providing inaccurate information about those driver's licenses to counties like Harris County, so that even if you put your accurate information, the county might not have the right number and it might not match. And we also know that many of our seniors and many of our folks with disabilities in the community don't have driver's licenses to begin with. But let me tell you what this form now entails and what you can do about it. There are 2 new lines that are there for you to fill in. One asks you for the first 4 digits of your the last 4 digits of your driver's license. And the other asks you for the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. If you're filling out your application to vote by mail, if you have a driver's license, you should put that information in. And if you know your Social Security number, you should put that information in. And you should do both of them, because if at least one of them matches, when that application gets in, they will accept it. And so if don't just half step it, fill it all the way out, put both of those numbers in there, just so to protect yourself. And then pay attention, because again, for very small reasons, they're getting rejected now. And so don't just send it in and assume everything is good. Send it in, and then in a few days, follow up. You should call the Harris County Election Administrator's office, or Fort Bend, or wherever you happen to live, or go to harrisvotes.com to find out the best contact information. But just make sure that it got accepted, because right now you can't just make the assumption, as you previously did, that it would go through properly. I've seen some people, it's been in the news, a good friend of mine, Pam Gaskin, who's very informed, very active in the political community. She had her mail ballot application rejected not once, but twice. And she's an extremely intelligent and capable woman who I know filled it out the way that she was supposed to. And so we just have to be that vigilant about this. And the same thing for your neighbors and family members. As they're filling it out, just make sure that you double check with them and say, hey, did it get accepted? Do you know that application got through to them and was ultimately accepted, so you will get your mail ballot and confirm that.
Let me just ask a couple of things that have come in. Can other people assist people in making sure that they are providing the right information on their mail-in ballot application? Can other people assist them?
So the law is unclear about that, and that's another aspect of all of this. This entire Senate bill it's intentionally confusing because they want you to have a fear that you might do something wrong and you might end up in handcuffs. And so the law is unclear about that level of assistance. I will tell you that if I were advising my own family member, I would say you can sit next to them and look over, their shoulder as they're doing this, but I would not fill in anything for them. I would not touch that application after they've written on it or signed it, because those are the types of things that, frankly, our attorney general is out on a witch hunt for, to try and put Black and brown people in jail for these potential violations. And so I think you can offer your advice, but I wouldn't take the step of filling out things for other people, given the potential hazards of that. And our state representatives here may have a little bit more detail on that they could share.
Yeah, and let me ask Representative Thompson, Representative Reynolds, based on your understanding, can a relative or a neighbor assist, for example, let's say seniors, in filling out their application for a mail-in ballot, and then even this is a form been put on by the church. Can the ministry of the church, for example, who can request a mail-in application on behalf of individuals? What's y'all understanding of the law?
Well, my understanding is that the person has to make that request themselves. Now, if there's a caregiver and the caregiver is told by the person they're caring for that they want to get a mail ballot, they can assist them. But the caregiver, is not defined in the law. But you got to make sure that when you're assisting a person, you can't be compensated. Compensation, and they claim that this is trying to get after voter harvesting, and you can't solicit or receive or accept compensation for assisting the voter. If you do, then you're subject to a state jail felony. But the caregiver can assist that person, and I think, but they can't tell them how to vote. They can read the ballot to them. They can tell them, if you want to vote in the mayor's race, Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so, here are the candidates. And they say, who I ought to vote for? Well, I can't tell you who to vote for, but these are the candidates. They can read it. They can read the candidates to them. They can mark the ballot for them under the direction of the person that they are assisting, but they cannot tell them who to vote or how to vote.
So if let's say if the Church Without Walls has a voter registration, a voter ministry, and they just want to go out and encourage people to ask for a mail-in application. They're not being paid. They just want to make sure that, instead of people waiting to get an application, they just want to encourage people to ask for a mail-in application. Can they do that?
Yeah, they can do it because they are a nonprofit.
Okay.
And they can pass out those ballot applications. I checked with the Secretary of State yesterday on this one. According to the Secretary of State of Texas, they can pass out mail ballots because they are nonprofit and they are not in to make a profit, but they are into as a voters education drive.
Okay, and can you print and again to anyone? So can the church, for example, a nonprofit, print mail-in ballot applications for people?
Maybe Chris can answer that one better than I can.
Chris,
so this part is interesting. So I mentioned that the first thing that we did in office was to make sure that all of our seniors had vote by mail applications in their mailboxes. The
Right.
law was passed to make that illegal, but only to make it illegal for elections administrators. So literally anybody else who's not an election administrator, so Chris Hollins today, who's just an attorney, or even Mayor Sylvester Turner or Pastor West, could pass out vote by mail applications to whomever you want. And so, yes, you can print those from home. Yes, you can print them and hand them to your neighbors or to members of the congregation. And that is legal within the law. But in sort of an
Okay, so
absurd,
say that one more time so we're clear. So who can provide the mail-in ballot applications or print them to make them available?
anyone, literally anyone, unless you are an election administrator. So any private citizen, any organization can print and distribute vote by mail applications to anyone whom they please.
Okay. And Representative Reynolds, you want to chime in on the mail-in application issue?
One thing I would add is that it takes a village. We all need to, under the strict new parameters that we're operating under, we can't become dismayed. That's what they want. Honestly, they want people to say, like Pam Gaskin, Chris Hollins is right. She is a very educated, long-term voter. She's a constituent of mine. I love Pam, and she's very brilliant woman. If her application was rejected twice, then there's something wrong, right? But this is not what we call a unintended consequence. This is designed to do what it's doing now. Okay, this is intentional. But what we have to do is be very vigilant, and all of us as villagers have to do our part to educate people about these new laws, like we're doing now, and then to help and assist people and to encourage people not to be discouraged. What we hope that doesn't happen is people say, "Oh man, my mail ballot was rejected. Forget it. I mean, just whatever. I tried again, and they rejected it. I ain't voting. What difference does it make? They can't get me out." Well, if that's the case, then go vote in person, okay? Or to cure whatever deficiency they said is there. But the last thing we cannot allow this to happen is voter apathy is increased, and then people don't go vote. They don't go and exercise their precious right. That is what some who put these laws into place, that is exactly what they want to see. So I want to encourage everyone that's listening to us, encourage people to understand what the mechanics of the new laws are, and then work within the confines of them, and then to vote your values so that we can vote for people who don't put voter suppression methods in place, and that we can do what we need to do to protect our citizens, especially our most vulnerable. That is what I'm concerned about. The vulnerable citizens who aren't as educated as Pam Gaskin, who aren't going to say, well, I'm going to fill out another one and another one. But those who just say, you know what, Mayor Turner, I tried and I don't know, it must not be meant for me. We need to encourage those people not to give up, and we need to assist them into making sure that they get their ballots certified so that they can vote by mail. But if they can't, we need to make sure that they're able to vote by any means necessary.
Okay, so the main thing is that even if their mail-in ballot is rejected for not having the right information, whatever, they can do it again, okay? Or even if it gets rejected twice, they can do it again. The bottom line is for people not to give up. And then even if that mail-in application is rejected, they can still go and vote on election day. Is that correct? We're all in agreement there? They can still vote on election day.
That is correct.
So you don't want to step away and not vote at all. So if there's a problem with the mail-in application and you try to get it done, and if that doesn't work, you can still vote on election day. But the bottom line is you need to vote. Okay. Now I want to talk about something else that's been.
Mayor, before you go to something else, may I just make one statement?
Absolutely.
You talked about voters' assistance a minute ago, and person who receive assistance to vote. Okay. And this new law says that the person providing assistance must have to fill out a new paperwork, and they have to disclose their relationship to the voter, and they must swear to an expanded oath under the penalty of perjury that the voter represented to them that they were eligible to receive assistance. And they did not pressure or coerce the voters into choosing to provide the assistance. And they would not communicate information about how the voters had voted to another person. And they understand that if assistance is provided to a voter who is not eligible for assistance, the voter's ballot may not be counted.
Okay, so then the question is, if I'm a volunteer. I just want to encourage people to vote. And if they have any questions, answer their questions. So as a volunteer, because I think this is important, because there are a lot of people, that want to assist, not trying to tell people who to vote for, but insist them to exercise their fundamental right to vote. As a volunteer, before I go to the next question, tell me, what can I do as a volunteer?
Well, first of all, the word encourage is not defined in the law. So we really don't know what it means.
Okay.
But they don't want you to encourage somebody. They don't want me out there campaigning and says, I want to encourage you to vote for Mayor Turner. I can't do, that's what they're talking about. If that person is a person who is eligible for assistance. But that's what we were concerned about. You got to knock on doors. You got to campaign. I mean, I don't see how the law interplays in that. You just telling people, listen, I want you to get out and vote. I don't see you violating the law on that. But I'm gonna just make this final caveat. When 2003, when the Republicans took over and they were breaking the open meetings record law, I told one of my Republican friends, I said, hey, y'all are breaking the law. And he told me, he said, hey, the law is not for me, it's for you.
Well, let me tell you, it ought to make people so mad they become even more determined to vote. Because since we church forum, what they meant for evil, we have to turn it for good. And the best way to turn it for good is to exercise your right and vote. I want to talk about these poll watchers, okay? Because Dean, you spoke about that King, those patriots that came
King
out.
Street Patriots.
Right. So let's talk about these poll watchers. What is the power? What can they do, and what can they not do? And,
they cannot record what's going on in the room. They're not supposed to record what's going on in the room.
So if they pull out their phone and try to record you voting, can they or can they not?
They're not supposed to record you voting at all.
Okay.
They used to be designated to a particular location, and that's where they stayed. But now they can walk all around the room. They can get real close to the voter. They are there to keep their eyes on any irregularities and report it. And they can report what they claim to be irregularities of the precinct judge, even causing felonies to be filed against those persons. So they can roam the room as much as they want to. They couldn't do that. But again, let me set the stage for a moment before I stop. And the stage is this: you got black and brown precincts, and you send these King Street Patriots, white folks, into them. It's going to make people think that it's going to make them feel very suppressed and very uncomfortable in there. You got somebody walking around looking at you and rolling their eyes around like, you may be doing something, or they'll iron you, or they iron you. That's going to make voters really uncomfortable. And when that information gets out, a lot of people say, well, the heck with it, I'm not even going down there. I'm not going to vote.
Well, let me ask Chris, and as you understand it, can a poll watcher stand over your shoulder while you are voting? Is that a yes or no? Sophronia is shaking her head saying no.
Right. So our state representatives fought valiantly to scale back parts of this law, because the original version of this law would have allowed them to carry video cameras and to look over your shoulder. But by bringing some of this to the light, even the vote suppressors who were pushing this law no longer had the gall to support these types of intimidating actions. But the dean is correct. You used to, as a poll watcher, have to be there, sit silently, and observe. Now you can roam freely around as a poll watcher. And what we can expect is that they will be doing things that are physically intimidating to voters as they roam freely. And even if an election judge observes violations of election law by the poll watcher, they cannot legally eject them from the polling place. They, in fact, have to give them a warning and can only call a peace officer if there is some sort of act of violence, a breach of the peace, as it were. But these poll watchers aren't able to by law now, and I expect them to be roaming around in ways that make people uncomfortable in the polling place, that make people doubt what they're doing in the situation. And even what's more alarming is what they can probably do outside, because if they're outside the polling place, then they can ask people questions. Then they can have their cameras out. Then they can take even more overt actions that would cause alarm to voters of colors. And so this is the part of the law that we haven't seen rear its head just yet, and frankly won't even see in the primaries, I imagine. It will be in October and November when we're going to the polls to make that final vote, when I imagine that these poll watchers are going to come out. And while this law was being considered in Austin, the Harris County Republican Party was actively seeking, and I imagine they still are, seeking to build what they define as a 10,000 member brigade to go to areas of color to protect integrity, in their words, but what we know to be to intimidate Black and brown voters.
So let me make sure. But they cannot stand over your shoulder. Is it? Are we all in agreement
That
on
is
that?
correct. That is a violation, and they are not allowed to do that. And so if you are voting, or if you're assisting someone to vote and that happens, you are within your rights to ask them to remove themselves. But the sad part of this is that even if you were to report that to an election judge, that poll watcher would still be allowed to stay in the voting place going forward, and would be likely to repeat those actions.
And they cannot use their telephones to record anything inside the polling area. Is that are we all?
That is correct, Mayor.
Now, but let me ask, because you got some bold people out here. So what if poll watcher now, and he or she decides, yeah, I am going to stand here, and I am going to stand over your shoulder, and I am going to use my phone, and you can't stop me. And they, what can you do? I mean, if somebody is standing over your shoulder while you're trying to exercise your right to vote.
That needs to be reported to the election judge, but moreover, it should be reported to our county attorney's office, who will then escalate it if need be to the district attorney's office and to our police and security authorities. But as the law is written, and it's written intentionally like this, as Representative Reynolds said, even when that happens, the election judge is powerless to discipline that poll watcher or to remove them from the polling place. And so the best you can do is defend yourself. And I don't mean physically. I'm not promoting altercations in the polling place, but to stand for your rights and ask them to step back. And if they refuse to do so, alert the election judge and have the election judge attempt to remove them from your physical area. And then again, make sure that is reported properly to the election judge and to the county attorney's office. Okay, because this is important. Dean, Representative Thompson, you want to chime in on that?
I was just going to say, law enforcement, they can have the poll watchers organization can have the hookup with law enforcement. They decided if there's a police that need to come out, that they won't come out, or they may take their time to come out. But meanwhile, what has happened is the poll watchers has more power in that place than the precinct chair. The people who are handling the voting process, they have more power than the election officer there.
Representative Reynolds, you want to chime in?
Yeah, Mayor, the only thing I want to say is the election judge has the authority if a watcher is committing a breach of the peace or an election violation, they have the authority to call law enforcement if they witness it, the violation. So they see it happen, they have the ability to call law enforcement it's going to take an extreme measure. This law was intentionally designed for voter intimidation. So a poll watcher under this new law, the King Street Patriot example Representative Thompson gave, can freely roam inside. That means that you're voting while they can't look directly over your shoulder. They can be very near you, and it's very, broadly defined, very loose. So they can be near enough to see and hear. That is what the law allows them to do. So yes, they can be pretty much in close proximity to you. So we're going to have some problems. And again, this is not what you call a unintended consequence. This is all by design. Why do I keep saying this? Because I served on the elections committee. I served on the elections committee for several terms. And Representative Thompson served on the recent committee that was the select committee that this bill actually came through before we broke quorum. And so we're very familiar with the intent, the legislative intent behind it. So we had experts that come in, Mayor Turner, and say, hey, this will likely lead to this. This will lead to Gary Bledsoe, state NAACP president, testified that about the King Street Patriot example and why we don't need partisan poll watchers to be able to freely roam. So they heard this expert testimony, and yet and still they still passed this bill with the specific intent at voter suppression. And that's why we have to have people there on both sides to make sure that we're watching the watchers. That's what I'm encouraging people to do peacefully, not causing disruption or fighting, but peacefully, so that when these people come into Acres Home and Sunnyside and Fifth Ward and other areas in Black and brown communities, that they don't just have them there, that they also have other people there as well. So you're not limited to one person. So there may be a King Street Patriot there, but there needs to be another person there as well, so that our community, people, Black and brown communities, don't feel intimidated by these folks that are there, that they know is not from their neighborhoods.
Now, how does a person become a poll watcher? I'm hearing all this conversation, and I say, look, I want to do my part in protecting the integrity of the election process and to make sure that people are not intimidated. I want to take my time to be a poll. How do I become a poll watcher?
So the Secretary of State, they have an online training program, and all that they have to do is complete that online training program, and they can become a poll watcher. It's that simple. As long as they complete that training program, it's online from the Texas Secretary of State, then they can easily become a poll watcher.
And can I decide which polling location I want to be? I'm signed up to be a poll watcher, and I want to be in Sunnyside. I want to be in Fifth Ward, Acres Home, you name it. Can I decide?
You can decide, and you don't have to be a resident of that precinct. You don't have to be a person that lives within that geographical location. And that is likely what we anticipate that we're going to see. I mean, I'm just going to be real with you. We're being transparent. They're going to send some intimidating looking folks, probably, white folks in Black communities, to intimidate them. That is what we anticipate seeing in some instances. I'm not saying every instance, but when Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time, we've seen this play out before. We're going to see it play out in November. Like Chris Holland said, I don't anticipate this to happen in February, March 1st. They don't care about the Democratic primary. But come the general election, when everything is on the line and at stake, I guarantee you, mark my words on this day, that we're going to hear massive reports of partisan poll watchers that come into Black and brown communities across this state, particularly in urban areas, Houston, where they are very concerned about people who are like Mayor Turner and Judge Hidalgo, Democrats, honestly, that have taken over. They're very concerned, and they're going to go in there to try to suppress the votes, to try to drive the votes down for folks who are likely to vote Democrat. This shouldn't be partisan, but this is very partisan. This bill passed on a straight party line vote with all but one Republican voting in favor of it. The one Republican who didn't, my colleague who came in with me, Lyle Larson out of Bexar County, he said, this is wrong. This is a form of voter suppression, and I can't go along with it. There was no voter fraud. So he told the truth. But guess what, Mayor Turner? he is not returning to the legislature. He's fed up with it. He said, I've had enough of it, and he's not seeking re-election. But he was the sole Republican in the House that voted against SB 1. All Republicans voted for it in the Senate, all but one voted for it in the House, and it passed overwhelmingly. So what I'm telling people is that we have to be vigilant. We have to get poll watchers that are going to volunteer their time to come into these communities so there's a balance, so people see a friendly face and they don't feel intimidated by these folks who are likely going to come in our community. They're going to come in the hood.
Well, let me ask this. We recognize.
Turner, if I could just add one thing to that, and Representative Reynolds, make sure you agree with me here. You do have to take that online training to be a poll watcher, but you can't then just show up to any poll you want and say, hey, I'm a poll watcher here. You have to be associated with a candidate or a party or an organization. The poll watchers are partisan by nature, which is not a good thing. But that means that you have to say, okay, I'm with Representative Ron Reynolds' campaign, and you have to come with a letter from that campaign appointing you as a poll watcher. So it's not as simple as the training. You have to be associated as well and have documentation of that.
Okay, that's a good point. And then let me ask you this. Understanding that we have these voter restriction laws in place, and part of it is the voter intimidation, suppression, like the poll watchers. How can a voter best prepare himself or herself when they're getting ready to vote, either vote by mail or vote in person? What's the preparation that a voter should take to when they go into the polls or they're voting by mail? What would be your advice to a prospective voter? What would you advise that voter? To prepare to be in the best position so that they're not intimidated. What would you advise this person? For example, can they take a ballot, a pre-marked ballot, that they filled out, and take it with them into the polling place? Representative Thompson, you're nodding your head.
They can. And they can take campaign literature in there if they want to. They just can't take a gun. Seriously, I'm serious.
I know
somebody asked in the chat, can you about it? So no, can't take guns.
Okay, so they can take a pre-marked ballot,
yes,
already filled out, and they can take it in there and pull it and pull it out and vote based on their pre-marked ballot. They can do that?
Yes, they can. Okay. And they can take campaign literature in there if they want to.
Okay.
They just can't, and I'm not joking, they cannot take a gun in there.
Now, does that apply to
you can go, Mr. Mayor, to the county election administrator's website, harrisvotes.com, if you live in Harris County. In addition to that, the League of Women Voters always has really good information. And so if you go to those websites, you can print what's called a sample ballot for yourself, and you can carry that or any other printed material into the voting center with you. Now you can, again, we can't bring our phones. And so you can have that in your pocket, but you can't have who you're going to vote for on your phone because it's illegal to pull that phone out in the voting center. But a printed material, whether it's something you brought yourself, or even if it's something somebody handed you in the parking lot, you can carry that in with you and use that to assist yourself as you're voting.
Okay, so I want to be very clear on that. You can't have it on your phone. Okay, no, so you can't go in there and then pull out your phone to do it. But I can bring in the pre-marked ballot or campaign material. I can pull that out and vote accordingly. I can do that. Absolutely. Now, what then happens then if a poll watcher sees me pulling out this paper and says you can do that? I mean, how would you recommend that person to respond?
This is why you have to know your rights. I think you have to stand firm and say, look, I know that what I'm doing is legal. I know my rights. I know what the law is. And you can politely ask them to excuse themselves while you cast your ballot. Okay,
but you don't want no physical confrontation, or you don't want to do that. But that person
and speak the real English, not to get not to some of the ghetto English that we could speak. But I would also add, Chris, that they ought to ask the the election officer
Officer.
to ask this person to leave me alone and let me cast my ballot, allow me to cast my ballot. I would
Yeah.
complain to the election officer.
Okay.
This is definitely a case of if you see something, say something. So whether it's happening to you or whether it's happening, if you're observing it happen to someone else, you should certainly alert the election judge there and say, look, I see this person who is intimidating people. I see this person who is spreading misinformation. I see this person who is making other voters feel uncomfortable. And you have to call that out and make that report so that even though this law is very weak in the regulation of poll watchers, you can give the election judge or the county attorney's office some amount of strength to whether they can do their jobs and protect you and protect other voters. So if you see something, say something.
And then one other thing before I go and time is moving very quickly. Now, come the general election in October, November. Now, people can't go in. There's no. You can't vote all Democrat. You can't vote all Republican. That is gone. You can't do that. So
No straight ticket. No straight ticket.
No straight ticket. So they got to vote per office, per person, but no straight ticket for the Democrats or Republicans. You got to go all the way down.
Yeah, make sure you vote all the way down Democrat, all the way down, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Let me ask this. The drive-through voting is gone. Is that right?
It's gone. It's gone.
Okay. And now what's the difference between drive-through voting and curbside voting?
So the key difference there. Oh, go ahead, Representative.
No, go ahead. You conducted it. Go ahead. I'll give you that. Go ahead.
Okay.
So curbside voting is still available, but curbside voting is limited in who qualifies to use that. And so you have to have some condition that makes it, unsafe or makes it physically unable for you to go indoors to vote. And if you qualify and you make the decision for yourself, you don't have to bring a doctor's note or anything. You make that decision for yourself. But if you have that disability or if you're unable to go inside, then you can still vote curbside. That is still the law. Drive-through voting was for any and everyone, whether you were a mom with your kids in the car, whether you just had a long day at work and didn't feel like getting out, anybody could use drive-through voting. And sadly, the laws have been passed that don't allow Harris County to use drive-through voting going forward. But if you are a senior who has trouble, getting in and out of vehicles, has trouble walking, or if you have any other sort of physical disability or other health challenge that makes it such that you should not go into a polling place, you are still entitled by law to vote curbside. And in Harris County, they have a nice little buzzer. You just pull up to it. It has the handicap sign on it. You press that button and someone's going to come out and help you and make sure that you can vote curbside today.
Good. And let me go back because I want to make sure that I touch on people with disabilities. So let's say you have a disability but you want to vote in the polling place. Okay. Can I have someone come and assist me? Is that okay, even under the bill that was passed? Representative Reynolds, you're shaking your head.
Yes, absolutely. If a person has a disability, they can still, within this law, no matter what county they live in all 254 counties in the state, they can still assess curbside voting to vote at the curbside, to have an elections administrator come out and bring the machine so they can physically vote within their vehicle. That is still the law.
Okay. And what about, and then people with disabilities at home on the mail-in ballot applications, they can have people assist them. Is there any issues there?
They can have assistance, but again, they can only read the ballot to them or read the names to them. They cannot encourage them how to vote. And they may have to fill out an affidavit.
Yes.
But they can, but that's much assistance that they can get. The caregiver gets a little more latitude, but not a lot.
Okay. And now and then let me ask this. And what if I come down with COVID and I haven't voted by mail, but I go and vote, let's say curbside. Is that a reason for people to come and bring the ballot to me? Is that sufficient?
I'm gonna let Chris answer that.
Yeah. So Chris, I got COVID. Well, I had COVID, but it's all gone now. But but let's just say, person comes down with, we're still in the pandemic. Okay. We're still in the pandemic. So a person wants to vote. Curbside service.
So again, that that law about who qualifies to vote curbside, that has to do with your health and with your ability to safely enter a voting center to cast your ballot, and you alone are entitled to make.
Chris.
Yeah, he's freezing up. I'll just say yes. You will be able to do that. Yes.
Okay,
But
good.
that is a personal choice for anyone to make if you qualify as someone who's able to vote curbside.
Okay, good. Now, and I don't know who's running. Are there questions from outside beyond those that I've asked that we can address? Who's keeping track of questions from the outside?
Good
My
morning,
computer
Mayor.
froze on my side. Were you able to hear me on
Yes.
that response?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning, Mayor Turner.
Yes.
This is Charlene Vincent, and I'm a member of Church Without Walls and Civic Engagement Ministry, and I've been monitoring the chat.
Okay.
I have a comment initially, though. I am an election judge for many years, and to touch on that point about bringing paper and campaign material into the polling place, the only thing you can't do is pass it on to your spouse or somebody you're with. That's illegal. So that's what we've been telling people when we register and vote and talk about voting is you can bring those things in, but you can't pass them to the person voting next to you.
Okay. Each one has to bring in their own.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's no joint sharing of information in the polling.
Correct. That's correct.
All right, because you know how we can do. We can, hey, that's my mama, that's my husband, that's my.
Yes. Just make all the copies and pass them out before you come into the polling place.
Okay, gotcha. Are there questions that we have not asked that people are asking that we can in the few minutes that we have left?
Most of them were about the poll watchers. I think you covered it. What do they do if a poll watcher is too close to them or is trying to intimidate them?
Okay, then let me just do this in the closing comments.
Okay, just a minute, Mayor Turner.
Okay.
This is Sheila Wolf. I'm also a Civic Engagement Ministry member. In our Q&A box, we have about 8 questions right now that need to be addressed.
Okay, you can give us to us right quickly so we can have the panelists address them. What's the first one?
Okay, first question. What state challenges in federal court have been filed to address the redirecting, and I think maybe they mean redistricting issue by the U.S. attorneys in Texas and by private entities? What state challenges in federal court have been filed to address they have redirecting issues by the U.S. attorneys in Texas and by private.
Representative Thompson, you want to handle that?
I know on the plaintiff side, and I'm talking about the NAACP, LULAC, and so forth and so on. There have been lawsuits filed against every redistricting plan that the Texas legislature has filed. Now I don't know what the Republic. I don't think I'm not aware of the Republicans filing any, but we have filed a lot of things in order to challenge these gerrymandered districts.
And I think the U.S. Justice Department has also initiated legal action as well.
They have, Mayor.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay. but a final determination hasn't been made. And since we're dealing with that too, we still have the joint John Lewis Voter Rights Act, the Freedom to Vote Act, that's still lingering. Well, it's not lingering. The Senate brought it up and it failed.
It failed.
Yeah, so, which is unfortunate. And it was a bipartisan failure. So that can't just blame Republicans on that, because you had a couple of Democrats that stood down as well.
Well, Mayor, for clarification, they supported. They just didn't support the filibuster, which was necessary because they didn't have the 60 vote threshold. So the two Democrats are set there in favor of it. They just weren't in favor of the ending the filibuster. But
Ron, I'm not going to even give them that, because if you're not in favor of changing the rule that would get you to the actual vote,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I agree. I agree with you. Yeah,
I don't give them a pass. I don't give those Democrats.
I don't either.
Yeah, don't tell me you love me but you won't feed me. So that ain't.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. All right. Sheila, what else? What's another question?
Okay, the others are pretty quick. Are Democrats organizing as poll watchers to go into Republican majority districts, as Republicans are planning to go into Democratic districts?
We're going to be looking to do that in the fall.
For the fall elections, the answer would be yes.
Okay, and let me also ask if Delilah will type in the chat our email address for the Civic Engagement Ministry. That way, if we're not able to address all of the questions that are asked, they can email us and we will get the answers to them. Someone wants to know, how can they check the status of their mail-in ballot application?
Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So the best way to do that right now is to call. And I don't have that phone number, but harrisvotes.com, if you live in Harris County, will easily point you to that phone number, and you can call and check in on the status of your application. That having been said,
I think the number, Chris, may be 713-755-6565. I think that's, does that sound right?
it sounds pretty familiar. But it would be great if someone could put that information in the chat and make sure that it's accurate.
I think it's 713-755-6565.
Okay, good deal.
But it's important to note that the law requires the election administrator to inform you if your ballot was rejected and give you an opportunity to cure. And so the other thing is just to watch your mailbox in the week or so after you send that application out, because if it was rejected, they will send you a rejection notice. And then you can go and cure that in a number of ways, including doing so online, if you have the abilities.
Yeah.
And remember, there's deadlines associated. They're deadlines. So if you don't get it in timely, you may not be able to vote by mail, but you still can vote in person.
Good. And I know someone said, can the church host a meet the candidates forum? And the answer is yes. There's no prohibition on that. Okay, Sheila, what's another question?
Okay, for early voting, can you vote at any polling place?
Yes. That hasn't changed. Yes.
And
Next
a question was asked if the recording today will be made available where it can be shared.
Well, that's up to the church without walls. I'm sure the answer on that would be yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm just about scrolling to the bottom. I think that's all that I see. Charlene, do you see any more that I've missed?
No, ma'am.
Well, let me thank the Church Without Walls. Let me thank Pastor West. Can't thank him enough for enabling this to take place this forum, because the information is vitally important. So, Pastor West, I can't thank you enough. I love you, man. Appreciate you. So I want to thank you. I think maybe the closing comment from the panel members, tell us why it's so important not to be intimidated, and the importance of people exercising their right to vote. Because oftentimes people throw hurdles. This is not new. People of color have faced these barriers. Jim Crow won before. But why is it important for people not to be deterred and just make sure that they exercise their right to vote either by mail or in person, and don't give up and say the heck with it. And I'll start with Ron, then Chris, and then Sophronia, and then I'm gonna turn it back to Pass.
Mayor, that is a great question, and I'm so happy that you asked that question. And I would say succinctly this is that voting is the infrastructure of our democracy. So goes voting, so go everything. When you care about criminal justice reform, then you need to vote, because guess what? Mayors have the ability to appoint with the city councils, the police chief, the district attorney. The district attorney is an elected position. So if you care about climate change, you care about equal pay for equal work, you care about our public schools, you care about our streets, our roads, our bridges, you care about fixing the grid. Everything, almost everything in our society hinges upon voting. Voting is so fundamental to our day-to-day lives. And if it wasn't so important, they would be working so hard to take it away. Finally, I'll say this. Too many people made too many sacrifices. They literally died. They gave every single thing, particularly people of color and of good conscience, white folks and people of all stripes, for us to have the precious right to vote. And I urge everyone to vote your values and to make sure that you remember elections matter. Elections have consequences. Vote your values and don't let anybody deter you from your federal fundamental blood bought, because people died for it, fundamental right to vote.
Thanks, Chris Hollins.
I mean, that's exactly right. We in this country, we suffered and were enslaved and had to fight for our physical freedom. But beyond that, for years and years and years, our forefathers, our foremothers, and some of our elders who are still with us bled and died in the battle to secure our rights, to ensure that we were truly free and that we could be a self-driven people. And the truth of the matter today is that in most circumstances, we don't have to bleed or die or face that type of physical risk to ourselves, but we do have to continue to stand up in the face of adversity. And so, we don't have to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but we might have to send in our vote by mail application one more extra time, right? We don't have to face police batons, but we might have to stand there as somebody is annoying as we stand in line or asking us questions that they perhaps shouldn't ask us. And we just have to do that ourselves, but also encourage our friends, our neighbors, our family members to make sure that we are securing our freedom by participating in free and fair elections and fighting to preserve the right to vote for ourselves, for our community, and for our children. And so I just want to thank Pastor West for your moral leadership on this and for presenting us the opportunity to keep our neighbors in this congregation informed. Mayor Turner, you have been a champion. We had a lot of fun times together in 2020 as we rode around town and made sure that Houstonians knew about their rights and were encouraged to participate in the process. And then, of course, our members of the State House of Representatives who took this fight from Austin all the way to Washington, D.C. To ensure that Texans, and particularly Texans of color who were being attacked and targeted, have the right to vote that so many sacrificed so much to preserve for us. And so I want to say thank you to all of you and to those listening who are standing alongside us in this fight. It's an honor to be here with you, and we know that we have more work to do. So thank you.
And Representative Thompson, and let me just say, you've witnessed a great deal during the course of your tenure, and it has not been easy to serve in a legislature where most of the people did not look like you or like me, but you have stood the test of time. So what would be your words of wisdom to
Well,
folks?
I want to thank the Pastor West and the Church Without Walls, and Mayor, you and my colleague Ron Reynolds and Chris for participating this morning. I see the importance of voting because we'll never be able to get Medicare for all if we don't do this. People ought to have a right to be able to go to the doctor one time a year just for a checkup and not be treated as not a part of this society because they happen to be poor. People ought to have a right to raise the minimum wages. You go in the store to buy food right now. Everything is going up. accepting wages. And people are working and they ought to be paid for what they're doing. Women ought to have equal pay. They should be paid for the same salary that a man gets for the same kind of work and the same qualifications. And then we families need that child tax credit. And we need to have the freedom to be able to move around within our city, state, county, and nation without fear of being jumped on or killed or murdered, or to be able to participate in marches, our First Amendment right, and not be killed or hurt because we happen to be a person of ethnicity of the African American community, or the Hispanic community, or the Asian community. So that's why the voting is so important. You're voting to get people in to make life better for not only you, but for the people who come behind you for centuries.
Thanks. And then
Mayor Turner, one
Yes.
quick thing I forgot to do, make a public service announcement. This Thursday, February 10th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m., Senator Boris Miles is going to have basically a follow-up to this, voting laws impacting the 2020 elections. He's going to have the Texas Secretary of State, as well as the elections administrator from Harris County and Fort Bend County, along with Senator Whitmire and Senator Alvarado and other folks. So I encourage everyone to get follow-up.
And Representative Thompson.
Representative Thompson and myself and Representative Democratic Party Chair. So there's going to be a host of people. And Chris Hollins, I know you're a part of it as well. I can read other names, but the point is, I encourage everyone to participate on this Thursday, February the 10th, from 6:30 to 8. It's going to be a very informative, just like this was. So if you didn't get all your questions asked or answered, make sure you tune in to this virtual town hall on Thursday, where we can have the Texas Secretary of State and the elections administrator from Harris and Fort Bend County to further answer any questions and give more information to the public. Thank you.
Right. And Pastor West, let me thank you, and let me because I think this has been very informative. Let me encourage you through your leadership to encourage other pastors. Sundays are important, but having like a voter conversation with a coffee on a Saturday morning where they can be in their homes and utilize the technology that we've been using for the last 2 years on this topic is very, very, very important, because people need to have the information. Otherwise, they're going to try to vote and mail ballots will be rejected, and they'll think, hey, okay, I tried, or they'll go and be intimidated. So having a voter conversation with their coffee on a Saturday morning virtually, gets it right into their homes. And this is something that every church can do it, because we've been doing it for the last 2 years virtually. So why not use what what has been occurring on information of this kind? So I can't thank you enough. Appreciate you, love you. Let me turn it back now to Pastor West.
Thank you so much, Mayor Turner. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Ron and Dean Thompson, for your, very effective leadership. And then thank you for the information. I'll close with one statement: the importance of being informed. One of the last prayers Jesus prayed is when he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I interpret that to say that ignorance kills. So thank you for informing us today so that we can live. Helping us know what we need to do. I really appreciate it. One of the things we'll do in closing is to make sure that we touch all of the communities of our community with this conversation so that they can write their notes and know how to go and vote. Let's go vote. I agree with you, Dean, that this is our right that's been given to us. Let's exercise our right to preserve our democracy. Amen. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Appreciate you. Okay.
And we ask everyone to stay on. There's some PowerPoint slides that will have some important information. Janice, are you able to show the PowerPoints?
Yes, it's showing right now.
Okay.
And it's in speaker view. So yeah, it's taking the whole screen.
Right. Thank you. See, someone in the chat says they can't see the slides. They cannot see the slides. And it says the PowerPoint is no longer showing. Okay, they said they can only see the picture of the church.
Thank you. Chat.
It's showing now.
Okay, someone asked if we can start the PowerPoint over since they couldn't see it.
Okay, we'll start it over.
They asked if the PowerPoint slides can be put in the chat.
Oops.